The word love is easily one of the most overused and uh, unfortunately meaningless words in the English language. I say meaningless not to say that there is no such thing or that love cannot be experienced. It's just that, in my experience, when many people talk about love, what they actually mean is desire. A young man tells me he loves this woman. She tells me she loves him. Um, 2 weeks later, they can't stand each other. This is not love. This is something else. So, again, I don't denigrate desire or love. Both of them have their place in our lives. Desire is a major motivating force. And in Tantra, desire is harnessed to take us swiftly toward our spiritual goal rather than being avoided as it is in ascetic systems. So, love, what is it? In its purest form, it is simply wanting the very best for the loved one without any motive or desire for or need for any kind of return. Um, this kind of pure love we see sometimes in mothers with their young children. You can say, well, even they have some motive that this child will grow up a certain way, or that's true with some parents, but especially when a child is very young, a mother may just take delight in the child's well-being, and that is why we extol motherhood often above any other relationship, because of that little touch of pure love that happens. Why we also adore our mothers, even when they make us crazy later in life. Because if we think back, many of us can remember that our mothers were there for us in ways that no one else was or could be. Um, Love also is willing not only to hold on to, but to let go of the loved one. In my own process, the first man who ever said he loved me, who was a Hindu monk, um, he guided me very specifically in ways that were quite beneficial, ways that I didn't even know that I needed to be guided. I hadn't asked for it, and he just offered it generously out of his own uh, loving heart. And later, there came a time when he seemed to push me away. And it was a time when I had just recovered from um, HIV, AIDS, and was feeling good and thought I could go back to India now and visit him maybe. And he said, no, that wouldn't be possible. Um, and I was very deeply offended and hurt at first. But as I thought more about what he had done, and especially as I saw the effect of what he did on my own mind, I realized that he, he had performed one last great loving sacrifice, that by being willing to say this hurtful thing to me, he released me from a kind of unhealthy attachment to him. Um, I had had this fantasy that somehow we would meet again and there would be some sort of reunion of love of the way it had been when I was a boy and young young man rather, and that fantasy bubble popped, and I found myself feeling free, freer in a way than I had ever been. And it facilitated then a spiritual awakening that happened shortly thereafter. So it was painful, but it was beneficial. So again, very consistent with what pure love is, being concerned with the welfare, the best interests of the loved one is a sign of true love. And so that has become my model for lovingness. Desire, on the other hand, is powerful. People cross the world in seeking um, partnership with another, and that urge to fulfill that desire is a great impetus to personal growth that brings you face to face with many aspects of your personality that you would not necessarily encounter otherwise. And so you learn much about yourself. Again, uh, desires may be fulfilled or not, and whether they are or not, they do move us through life. And in that sense, they're useful. And in Tantra, as I said, they're specifically harnessed that when we see that no matter what it is we desire, the deeper urge, the deeper longing is for something permanent, something fulfilling, that it's actually the divine presence within whatever it is, the person or the thing that we desire, that draws us to it. And I've often likened it to uh, the sun glittering in little fragments of glass. Say a mirror has broken, and then the sun shines, and the fragments each reflect a bit of its glory, and we go running after each of these fragments, and when we get there and pick them up, we find we don't get the sun. We only get a reflection of it, and maybe even cut our hands in the process. And if you do that enough, you realize that the sun is nowhere in all of these little fragments, that we have to turn our gaze upward to find the sun.